Hi, Coach Sarah here. A few notes about today's podcast. If you have always wanted to see what Coach MK tends to look at in Training Peaks for clients she has coached one-on-one, we highly recommend you watch this episode as a webinar, and it is available in that format on our YouTube channel. You can find a link to it on our blog at coachedandloved.com/blog and in the show notes of this episode. You'll likely find the visuals helpful, especially if you specifically want to learn to speak Training Peaks. If you would just like to listen to a thoughtful conversation about finding training-related wins in unexpected places on your commute or on your run, our amazing editor has cleaned up the audio and put it in a podcast form for your listening pleasure, and it's coming right up. Before you listen, I just want to say one thing. Coach MK and I rarely mention specific pace numbers in this conversation, and that's intentional. But Training Peaks does generate a lot of other numbers that tell us things about where I am fitness-wise, and we do talk about those. Now, I don't really care who thinks I'm slow as fuck, but I definitely don't want to invite comparison between my numbers and those of the athletes we coach. If you have a hard time hearing about my numbers without feeling like they are somehow setting a bar for you, I feel you, and I understand. But my hope is that you might come away from this session with tools for how to identify wins of your own that you didn't know were there. You are coached, you are loved, and you're winning at life.
Hi, I'm Coach MK, founder of the Fitness Protection Program. I'm a run coach, not a life coach. We're never really talking about the running. Running is the tool. It's the conduit we use to examine the world we live in, as well as its impact on our own lives and the lives of the people around us. How we react to certain people and to certain stories tells us a lot about how we view ourselves. I'm committed to the thoughtful, intentional exploration of the importance of running so that no one discounts their own badassery, ever. Final note, this podcast is geared towards every runner who won't lose their home, livelihood, or health insurance if they show up to the corral with a hangover. Not that I'm encouraging you to do that, just saying. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the Fitness Protection Podcast.
Hi.
Hi. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I mean, I did not have a princess birthday this weekend, so clearly I'm not as good as Roz.
Oh my God. Roz is good. We had our ups and downs this weekend. I'm not going to lie. The Instagram, as always, a highlight reel. The great moments were really great. And then I tried to go get her a bike because that was what I had in my head as the birthday present that I needed to get her for her 4th birthday. And you know what? She didn't want a fucking bike. She really didn't. She had no interest in doing it unless she got to pedal it. And I felt kind of strongly that I wanted it to be a balance bike because I've looked into all of that and I feel like they have a point. Yeah. And she was not having any of it. And it was a huge, huge mess. And I was crying and she was crying and the bike was in the back of the car. And my husband was like, do we just give it back now? And I was like, I don't know. That feels pretty mean. Like that feels like we just take it away from her because like she had a bad reaction and I'm not ready to do that yet. But it felt pretty bad. It genuinely felt really bad because we had a really nice day up until then. And I was like, why did I need to do this?
You know what? I got to say, sorry to interrupt. I just want to interject with when the idea that social media is a lie, I take real issue with that because the lie is not what you're presenting. It's the way we interpret it. It's like data, right? Data doesn't really tell a story. Two people can look at the same data set and come up with totally different conclusions.
Absolutely.
The story is in the eye of the beholder, of the person looking and feeling bad. Like that's your inner voice telling you something that's not what you're portraying. Because the flip side of that, for you to be like, this should have been a great day and wasn't, and telling quote unquote the truth, that's not really fair to you. That's really not fair to Roz. That's not fair to anybody. So when we accuse people of playing perfect, that never feels fair to me, because if they were showing the real stuff, what that person is doing is actually would be pretty unfair to somebody else with less power, somebody who probably can't, like their kid or their spouse, or there's something weird about, like, I find it hard even in the moments when I'm sharing something that is not awesome, or when I'm sharing a struggle, because I do have an amount of thin privilege and, social privilege and white privilege. And I'm aware of my privilege while I present these things, because to others, that I'm actually I'm showing my struggle and telling my truth in a way that doesn't invalidate someone else's. It's a really hard thing to do. And it's almost impossible to do when you're talking about your kid. Plus that thing is going to live forever. So all that just to say that like that you shared some really terrific pictures. It is fun for me to watch you struggle with Ross first thing in the morning. But I also get that that's still truly, a struggle. Like I'm watching a power battle that's not mine. And that's why I find it entertaining.
And I find yours entertaining too. Right back.
No doubt. Yeah.
Well, and I was really glad with the way things ended up. We woke up on Sunday and we're like, okay, we're going to reset. Sunday was her actual birthday. We had a very, very nice morning. She came with us to church. She sat next to me in church for the first half and colored quietly. And
wow.
Looked up at me and, had something to say in a quiet voice, but she got what she was supposed to be doing. It was amazing. And afterwards, my family came over for brunch. We had a great time. She had to be prompted a little bit, but she said thank you for all of her birthday presents and gave everyone hugs. And then I took her upstairs. We sat in her rocking chair and read a story. And it just felt like things were kind of back to okay. And I said, Roz, do you want to take the bike back to the store and wait until you're bigger and then try again? And she was like, yeah. I said, are you sure? She said, yeah. And that was it. And so then she went down to take a nap. I took the bike back to the store and I felt like 100 pounds had been lifted off my shoulders.
Yeah. And
I was just like, this was about me. Getting her the bike was about me, thinking I was behind, thinking I needed to they're like, oh my God, all these other kids in her class are riding a bike. I am doing her a disservice by not getting her on a bike now. You know what? She didn't want to get on a bike. She did not want to. Mm-hmm. And if I didn't take it back, it was going to sit around and accuse me of having made this bad decision in the first place and then not following through or whatever. So it was a really great way to end the weekend. And then I went to Target and I got her an Elsa and an Anna doll. And that's what she actually wanted.
Oh, those dolls that she held up during the live stream to me? Oh.
Yeah, those were the okay, 2.0. Let's try this.
Wow. I got bikes for my kids 2 years ago because they asked for them. And we had finally just paid off all our student loans and we had a little disposable income. And it just seemed like a very normal ask. What I hadn't really considered, though, was how much prowess is required to ride those bikes anywhere. We had nowhere to go. We drove everywhere because we had a baby and because I didn't have a good arm and didn't have a good neck. And we would have to go somewhere where we could ride unobstructed and really enjoy it. We would have had the closest would have been Wash Park, and my kids did not. That's like 3/4 of a mile away. Mm-hmm. So with 4 kids and one infant man, we riding to Wash Park would have been a feat. And we would otherwise we're driving there at a bike, which doesn't feel right. So long story short, the bike sat in the backyard completely unused for 2 years. Now, this is the first year we used them every day. And of course, we've had to be relocated temporarily to this amazing new house that we love a whole lot, but there's no sidewalk in this neighborhood and there's nowhere we can go on a bike. So once again, those bikes are sitting at home. So it's gift of the Magi type stuff. I say this to validate you. If a bike fits, great. If a bike doesn't, I always have to question myself. Am I really as behind as I think I am? Because we all get that thought too, because we care about our kids and we want to do things right. I know I got a lot of crap for a long time. They're like, you haven't taught your kids to swim? It's so dangerous. Well, we live in Colorado. It is hard to find a public pool in Colorado. Like you have to be, for your child to die by drowning, like it's not a serious threat. None of our friends own swimming pools. They're never showing up in places where a swimming pool is.
Go to the beach on the weekends.
No. Yeah. We don't even go to the mountains on the weekends. Again, for the last few years, bad arm, bad neck, couldn't move much. We stayed home a lot. So we had started doing the swim lessons in earnest before our vacation last year, knowing that we were going to get on the boat before we went to Coeur d'Alene. And then we did them again this year before going to the Ozarks. And thank God we did, because nothing would have ever pointed to, we're going to have to gut the entire middle floor of your house. And by the way, the only rental house that insurance will pay for happens to be in the fanciest part of town, complete with the pool that of course does not have a fence around it, because this house and the pool were both built before there were laws governing the way that houses with pools have to be built. So, very long story short, this is the first time, that threat has been real. And I can't possibly think of one for bikes Like, what is the use case? Like, you're behind. It's dangerous if they don't know how to ride a bike. I personally can't think of one. Great. I got a lot of scare from people like, your child could die. I'm like, all I got to do is keep them away from a pool. Yay. I can do that. But with the bike, I feel like there's no shame or fear case there that could be legit.
You know, we live in a really big bike area. Like, people bike everywhere. I bike Roz to school now. That's been a new thing as of this past summer. People are like, biking it's definitely a little bit of a status symbol. It's a little bit of like a look how, no offense to people who bike. I bike too. I'm doing the same thing. I'm talking to myself here, but there's an element of like, look how much I care about the environment that I'm biking everywhere. And it's genuinely more convenient and nicer a lot of the time because I live in an area where traffic is terrible and they're extending the train line out through my town right now. So there are 3 bridges that are closed and the traffic is a mess, and it is going to be a mess until like late 2020 at least. So being able to bike is really nice. And you know what? Roz still fits in the bike trailer that we got this summer. So for now, I'm going to tow her around. And then when she wants to ride a bike, we'll revisit that. But now that I sort of look at all of this, I'm like, oh, I see where all of this stuff was coming from. Like, I see why I was at a point where I thought this is really important, and why actually I was not really seeing that situation clearly.
Yeah. Yeah. And by the way, I know I mentioned in the live stream that we were going to talk through 2 big wins that I know that you had probably overlooked to your training. So before we even get into Training Peaks and start really like taking this apart, and the reason we're going to be recording your screen, sharing your screen instead of mine, is that I have I was having some texting issues with my phone, which needs new software, but that's a totally separate story. I had to install something called Pushbullet, which pushes things to my computer. And I'm having a lot of issues with which notifications get through to my computer and which don't.
I'm going to see how that would go. Yes.
Because in the last 24 hours, I've gotten more notifications on my phone from more apps that I haven't opened in a year and a half. And I don't know if that's because Pushbullet's on it now, but I'm getting all the notifications. And I don't know that we can go through and erase things that pop up on my screen as easily as we can. The things that I say accidentally. I don't know the editor.
I have no idea where to start.
Yeah. So we're just going to avoid that altogether. But that is a huge win. Normally, when people say, I want to do more, and, I've only been in this game for 5 years, but when people say, I want to do a little bit more work and I say no, they will come up with, I'm like, it's not a good idea. They will come up with some use case, but I have to. And it becomes like almost like arm wrestling, where like, haha, but here's my trump card, but I have to, and I have no choice. Well, my car's in the shop and we can't afford to fix it. So I will bike and pull like my children. They're 14 and 17, but I will pull them, and they don't have a car to drive now, and I'm not buying the bikes. Like I've had something almost that extreme before. And that wasn't that long ago. Yeah. So to that end, the links to which people will go to like sort of overachieve or sneak in extra work when the answer they don't want to hear is, what else can I do? The answer is less. It's hard. It's hard because we have been programmed to be proactive to the point of problematic in America. There's always something you can do. Just find the work and do the work. And yes, I'm all about that. And it's really hard to hear. What do you need to do? Less. Oh my God. So in your case, you took up 2 additions simultaneously without really acknowledging how close they were to each other. And the reason I didn't say anything about it was because these decisions were mutually exclusive. You weren't trying to sneak in more work. You were tired of dealing with the traffic situation. You were tired of a lot of things, and the bike thing didn't come overnight. It just happened in an instant, because buying a bike doesn't take a whole lot of time, right? So I had like watched you kind of go through this, and what I didn't realize that starting doubles and biking would happen almost practically concurrently.
It didn't even occur to me until right this minute, actually, that happened.
So that effectively adds an hour minimum 3 days a week, and half an hour 2 days a week to the amount of work that you're doing. Because Do you remember you've talked a lot about the effort and the power you had to generate to pull Roz up the hill? Remember what we said last night about VAM?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So, and you're not just piking, you're like,
video.
yep. That Italian word that no one has learned but you. I doubt they're teaching it at Training Peaks Academy this
totally
weekend.
Fine to be that person.
It's good. Well, I mean, you should be with, Harvard PhD in Italian. Like you should use every Italian word whenever you can and break it down for us.
I must.
But when you think about that too, in the context of like how we used it last night, what is VAM? For those who do not listen to the Ask Away podcasts, what is VAM?
I know that it is, the Italian words are velocità ascensionale media, and it has to do with the speed going up a hill, the average speed going up a hill.
Mm-hmm. And the reason that matters is that it normalizes the work that we do. It's how, instead of comparing the hill, which the system doesn't have a great way to do yet, that would require your watch to collect way more data. So we needed a way to sort of back into it when this person's going up this hill versus this hill. How much work are they doing if they do the same hill more than once? 2 hills, different hills did they use the same VAM? There are ways that we can say, well, if this person, so I know you haven't gone back and done this hill lately, but remember the first time we did this hill and it was this tall and this slope and your VAM was this. And now we're on a much steeper hill with a different type of climb and your VAM was different. That can be a sign of improvement. It can be a sign of increased efficiency. So then we feel like we can go back and do that super hard workout again, right? So it was a way to normalize power, an additional metric that helped us standardize what people were doing, knowing that it would be really hard to get a lot of triathletes to do the same courses, say 2 or 3 times in a week, in certain cases. So if you want to go back and look, if you want to do that now and share your screen, go look at some of those doubles, which you've been recording. Take a look at the VAM. Let's start there.
Okay.
So the first big win is that we added a lot of work and you aren't feeling it because you've been doing this very consistently since, when was your marathon?
2017.
Okay. So it's been almost 2 full years.
Well, and if you count the cycle leading up to that marathon, which was a really good cycle, it was just the marathon itself that sucked. It's really been since let's see, I was injured in March of that year, April, building back up. So May 2017 to now.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. So when we look back at all that consistency, of course, it wasn't a big deal now to add in an additional hour per day of work. Mm-hmm. So when you look at this double that you did, this is your second run of the day, right? But let's go to the cycling.
Okay.
Because you record all those with Ross too.
I do. I'm not necessarily wearing my heart rate monitor for all of them, but I think, no, I wasn't for that one. Let's see. Oh, this one has a heart rate TSS. Okay. So this is riding to school with Roz.
Click analyze, please.
Okay.
Okay. This is your VAM. So your VAM is a 0.3. There's no ideal number. It doesn't work that way. Remember, the system is getting to know you when we first start with something. And what we look for is how things change over time. How much variation would you say is there in the course that you take to get Roz and bring her home in the bike?
Not a ton. So bringing her home is harder because it's mostly uphill, but it's very gradual. Mm-hmm. And going to school, there's one incline at the beginning and then it's mostly downhill, which is why, and also we stopped in the middle to get a croissant. That's why there's a big, big empty space here. So, there does not feel like there is much variation. Let's say that it's not, I go the flattest, easiest route I possibly can both ways.
But you're doing some work. And the reason I know that is because
I'm pulling a 35-pound kid in a trailer that weighs an additional 10 pounds or so.
Exactly. When we shut out of this, we're going to go back and look at the TSS generated for your double and compare it to, so let's go do your double of the same day or the closest double to this. So, in your brain, that's a 32 minutes is 0.39 of training stress score.
Okay. 0.39.
So your double is 22 minutes and 30 RTSS. Okay. Mm-hmm. Which is, so the way that I read into that is that, one, you're doing a lot more work. So, if you're not seeing lots of changes in other places, your body's adapting to this work just fine. And it has been ever since you started it. The differential between, 22 minutes and 30 versus like 32 and 39, you're doing harder work when you're on the bike. That number is probably higher when you haven't stopped for a croissant in the middle. I mean, not to say like massively higher, but it's still higher. Like the system knows that you're doing something on a bike. It knows that there are some hills involved and there's some control required on the downhills as well. The system does not categorically know that you're pulling a 35-pound human in a 50-pound carriage or whatever, because it's more like Roz might weigh 35 pounds at her age, but you're pulling a lot more weight than that, including your own. Right. So the amount of work your legs are having.
Not light. I've had my bike for a gajillion years. It was cheap when I bought it, and it does just fine. But it's not like a svelte. It's a workhorse, and I like it.
It's not optimized for dragging heavy things up mountains, which is fine. You don't need one. But when we talk about the work and we think about the work, that's a long way of saying your body's adapting beautifully to this work. VAM is not something I care about very much. It will be generated. So like here on your double, I'm like, whatever. It's not something I look at on a day-to-day basis. The only time I would care about it is when my ultra runner is running outside and she's doing either downhill surges or uphill runs. Then I'm looking at VAM and I'm not discussing it with her because it's not a discussion. It's a data point that I use to inform the next phase of her training. And if I need her, it's only been once I ever needed her to go, could you do that run again? Could you run that trail again this weekend? And she didn't really ask why. She was just like, okay, which is why I say she's coachable. Like if she saw a signal in there or wondered what I needed, she doesn't open up a conversation that could put little weasels in her head where she's trying to give me what I want, which makes her not miss the point. Does that make sense? Like when I talk about what I do for Coach Tia, 2-mile warm up, 2-mile cool down, 2 miles of 2x2 in between. I know that what we're looking for is a marathon pace will fall out of that effort. I cannot have that conversation with any of my one-to-one clients because if they knew that, they would be trying to predict their marathon and would focus so much on pace and not on the effort level required. I wouldn't get it would render the data useless to me. And I know when it's happened the second I look at it. So that's a longer way of saying like, when you know what I need you to get out of a workout, the chances are pretty good you're not going to get it.
You're going to try and game it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I used to do that. I actually remember when I was training for Twin Cities in 2017, and I had heard you say something about the last 20-mile run, the vanilla long run. So like no progression miles, no nothing. You said something about that being some kind of a prediction run. And I couldn't get that out of my head. And so my last 20-mile run, I was like, well, beforehand, I asked if it was okay, if my heart rate went up a little bit because I was going to be going up a hill. And you were like, okay, yeah, whatever. Because you knew that it wasn't like, that was it. I knew too much. I was going to like whatever. There was no way that it was going to be like an objective source of anything anymore. And I think back to that and I think it's kind of funny. But in the moment, I was like, well, if I can finish this 20-mile run in XX minutes, then that means that I might PR in the marathon. And I had been training with you for a long time and I still could not get that way of thinking out of my head. So yeah.
How I say like there are flexion points where the game changes completely. The first flexion point is 9-minute miles, once your easy effort pace is consistently broken 9-minute miles in your at 140 in your training, then the game changes. And the next big set of changes happen when your easy effort 140 pace is around and usually below a 7-minute mile. Quick off the cuff math here. All right. Mile 20 of the marathon, how many miles left to go?
6.2.
Okay. If you were running a 6-minute mile, how many minutes would be left in your marathon?
Okay. Give me a second. I'm not fast at math, but I can do it.
Ballparking is fine. 6 times 6 is 36.
Yeah.
Add a little bit to it. Add roughly half that. Let's go with 40.
So yeah. Okay.
6 times 7 is 42. So we don't want to go a whole. So just anything anywhere between 36 and 42 is accurate enough. So let's say 38.
37, 38 minutes. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So 20 miles is the prediction run for that person. And that's why. Because their easy effort pace is usually going to be roughly 2 minutes per mile slower than whatever they've done. So 20 miles gives me the picture of what 26.2 roughly is going to look like. For everybody else that's slower than that, it's 22-mile run. And that's why the marathon plans with race paces had a 22-mile run in it. And I never talked about that. And that's why I talked about the 20-mile run to see who would do it. And that was my cue, or who would make the mistake I expected them to make. And that was my cue to not ever talk about the 22-mile run.
Which you were smart not to do. Although I guess the cat's out of the bag now. Oops.
Yeah, because people came at me and they were like, you were wrong. You said this would predict and it wouldn't. And I'm like, you're right. I'm sorry. And I'm stupid. I'm going to get into the job now. Thanks. But by the way, I told you not to use it that way, but okay. And that's why.
Magical thinking is very powerful. I mean, it was very, I really wanted to like hear you and be one of, and like understand what you were saying and not make the mistakes that I know that you had experienced people making. I was like, I really want to like have a good attitude about this. I'm calm. I'm in a good place. But the allure of sort of, this 20-mile run is taking me this long. What could that mean? It's very powerful. And so I really understand how someone gets there. Cause it's even now I'm finding myself being like looking at, my EAT from the other day and looking at and thinking like, wow, okay, now I have a range. Now I know what my A pace from my most recent EAT was. I know roughly what my easy effort pace is. So now I know my marathon pace is going to be somewhere in between probably. And where is it going to be? I don't know. I'm starting to like think about that in a way that I wasn't really excited about thinking before. And I'm trying to be very like sort of notice where all those thoughts are going and be careful not to let them take over the work that I'm still doing. Because I still have another 20-mile run this week, by the way.
Got a lot to do.
There's work.
But there's something else to think about too. If you want to go to not your most recent EAT, but the one before that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So the one from a few weeks ago that we talked about on the EAT podcast, that would be this one.
Yep. But before you click analyze, click out of that.
Yep.
Go up a couple more. We'll come back to this, but I just want to scroll through your training peaks for a minute.
Okay.
1, keep going. 2, keep going. 3, keep going. 4, keep going. 5, keep going. 6, 7, 8, one more is enough. So I don't remember, and it doesn't really matter exactly. I just wanted you to visually have this, capture that. For 8 weeks, you'd been biking and doing the double when you can and walking a bit more. You're still at Harvard. It was very different than where you are right now. But to take stock in that, elevation gain, 2,299 feet, your custom duration. Okay. When you scroll down 1 week, your fitness versus your fatigue with adding all that extra didn't really move the needle. Elevation gain, that's halfway to Denver. You climbed halfway to Denver each week in your training with all of the things that you were doing. And you didn't notice that. It just sort of happened. So this has been accumulating. Keep going down. Because I know everybody only sees the run, this run, the next run, the next run, the next run. But it's like, yeah, but it's not a 1-for-1. Your mileage was increasing because we'd snuck in the doubles and because you had the bike, which generates a whole lot of power, which is effectively a strength workout.
This is when I started doing the bike. This was the week in July. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And your form took a big dive, right? Because you'd adapted to the jogging just fine.
To minus 14. Yep.
Which is, again, not something to worry about. That differential doesn't mean you're doing something wrong. It just means we've added in something new. Mm-hmm. Because it's a staple of your day. I didn't want to point any of this out to you, but now we can look back and in hindsight, some things look better. Clearly not the movie Ready or Not for you, and that's fine. But your training peaks hopefully will be. Yay! Keep scrolling.
Yay. Okay. Oh, down. Okay.
Down. Yeah. So Form 11, up just a little bit. Form 7. So it took a big nosedive and nothing really changed. The intensity from week to week, nothing really changed. Your body just adapted very quickly to this additional work. It went from -13 to -11 to people get wrapped around the fitness number jumped, and it's like, it doesn't have to do with your fitness number. Your fitness number is a measure actually of training stress cumulatively that I've put on top of you. What I'm watching is to see how your form reacts, because all of these are rolling averages. Don't worry about what that means, but this is precisely what I'm talking about when I say it's how these 3 variables interact with each other over time. And Training Peaks is a brilliant visual representation of this. So scroll back down again. Your elevation gain has been more and more. 4,599, you almost climbed all the way to Denver. But you were getting a little more bold in some of your run choices as well. You weren't afraid to add in hills, and you were biking up hills. And so even though we've got double the elevation gain, we've got quite a bit more fatigue going on. Your form, yay, hasn't really budged, which is how I look at that and say, okay, she can take it, but it's more like we aren't overdoing it. So now keep scrolling down until you see that, not the most recent EAT, but the one before that.
Okay.
Unless you have a question.
Add for the sake of everyone knowing that I'm not totally irresponsible, is that I was talking about this with my PT, because I've been all through this. I'm also seeing my PT once a week. And my biggest challenge throughout the summer has been biking Roz up the damn hill to the PT. That is the hill that it comes very close to making me stop and walk every time. And it's very, very hard. And so I talked to him about it, and I was like, here's about how much I've been riding. Like, this is about what that looks like. What are your thoughts? He asked me some questions. Like, how do you feel? How are you sitting? Where are you feeling it when you're biking up the hill? This kind of thing. And he was sort of like, my nerve issue in my hamstring was not getting worse. It was not bothering me on the bike. And he was like, you've added some work, and I can see that. Let's continue to do what we're doing and keep an eye on it. I think kind of like you, he was like, let's not categorically say this is bad. Let's not categorically say this is great, because he knows that if he encourages me too much on anything, then it might incentivize me to do more. And that's not what he wants. Mm-hmm. You guys both know me pretty well.
Well, and that's also why the brain fire of the vanities in our podcast exists. I have to be hyper conscious and hyper careful of the message that I'm sending people. So I would rather almost not say something than to say something and that becomes a bad coaching cue that someone can then take and use. It's not that I have some esoteric secret knowledge that I refuse to share with people unless they pay me. I'll teach everybody everything I know. The thing is is that knowledge going to lead to better outcomes? Right. I would argue not always, especially if in
the case of that 20-mile prediction run,
Yeah. Keeping my mouth shut about that for a long time was hard.
Yeah. So here we are at the EAT. Do you want me to open it now?
Yep.
Okay. So this is my EAT from August 18th. The one that was very hard, that I did not have fun doing, and that, my paces were slower than they had been in the past. And
Stop for a second. Before you go further, because that's another overachiever thing. You proved the answer before we've had the conversation.
Okay.
So I don't mean to be shut up, Sarah, but rather sort of let's let it be
maybe a little bit.
Well, let's let it be what it is, because when you talked about that, and you have had a great attitude towards it, right? Nothing that you've said has been incorrect. What you haven't done, and that I want you to do, is give yourself credit for all the work you had been doing. So going back to connecting this to the conversation last night about power that was had in Ask Away, and if you haven't listened to that podcast yet, it was a fun one. You were generating a lot of power during that bike ride, and thank God they're short. If they had been longer, I would have been like, I don't know. As long as you were seeing the PT, I wasn't worried about it. So with all the additional cumulative fatigue, when you're tired, your body can jog, but it can't run hard. That's why sleep is so important to recovery. So when you're impaired in some way, when you're not fully recovered, what your body cannot do is generate power. So I know you went out there that day and you were like, I feel this in my lungs. I'm like, yeah, that was probably some of the air. That was also cortisol. What you didn't notice was because we don't need to measure it. I feel like it's visible right there. You had been doing a lot of very regular, very consistent power generating work. It wasn't added strategically into the plan, because if it had been, I would have had to time things differently so that the work would have been worth it to you when we did this EAT. Because otherwise, if we were doing this trying to improve outcomes as a specific performance workout, this would have invalidated all your work. I'm doing all this extra work and I'm not getting faster. No, this is a lifestyle that you had embraced, And luckily this happened in summer, so it wasn't a bad conversation. I'm sure you were disappointed with this, but the difference between this is that you can't see the impairment that you had for power generation because you've been using it so consistently while building your training as well. Mm-hmm. There's not a good number for you're tired, but what I can say is this is definitely a lower efficiency factor than normal. If you could go through and and just highlight the first lap of the EAT. So if you go down to the laps, scroll down to the right of the screen, further to the right, the other sidebar.
Oh, down here. Okay.
Yeah. Right. And then click what would have been the first lap of the EAT.
Yeah.
Okay. Notice how the numbers above change. So your efficiency relative to where I would have expected it drops quite a bit. Just take note of these numbers. It'll become more important when we go see the next one. Because it's not we're looking for improvement specifically. This is not how to do it. This is the broader conversation about context. Then when people are like, just get to the point, MK, I'm like, you can't cut to the chase. It doesn't work that way. Then you won't, if you cut to the chase to get to the answer, you've skipped the lesson and the understanding, and the answer is worthless. As a teacher, you know that. So, we look at that first lap, and we look above, and we look at the efficiency factor 1.13. VAM, again, doesn't necessarily matter. Net graded pace, it's fine, but that's the first place our eyes float to because that's what we're trained to think about. So my A pace on the EAT is a 951. I look then at the heart rate, and it's incredibly steady. The pace line, I would zoom that. So that little slider bar next to distance. No, the slider bar a little bit further up and to the left. Yep. Slide that to the right, smoothing, just a little bit more stop. Yeah. So I like to have it there for a runner because your pace is going to do this, but that doesn't mean that you were running like a jagged little pill. That's some measurement, some natural fluctuations. Mm-hmm. But generally speaking, you had to back off a little bit. Mm-hmm. Know what it feels like. And that disconnect, again, you are more solid than this. So once I've smoothed it and I look and I'm like, she's got a decent amount of control, but she's just not generating the power that she usually does because she's tired. That's it. Yeah. All she needs.
This is the first lap of the. Now I have it highlighted with the number. So it's 902 for the pace, and the efficiency factor is 1.19. I think the numbers have not changed up here, but I had to click it somewhere down here. But it does. I mean, we're looking at the same thing though on this graph.
And your efficiency factor spiked up a little bit because we're all a little more efficient. We're a little bit faster. And that's a thing. Well, that's the argument. Well, I should be doing more tempo runs it faster so I get more efficient. Like, doesn't work that way. That's training to a model. That's not training to an event, right? That's trying to game the numbers. That's not trying to impact the outcome. Right. So generally speaking, when you are functionally fit and strong and your large muscle groups are not necessarily overcompensating, when you're pacing yourself well, your efficiency factor will increase the faster you go until it kind of falls off a cliff. But that's not an argument to spend more time at those higher effort levels necessarily. You have no business to track. Well, no, but even the first time you were said something about, can I do the strength beta? And I was like, no. Or she ran a race with this you, and you're like, yeah. I was low key glad you didn't decide to back out of the race because I would have had to then say, well, you can't do because you're biking and the power, and I can't put you on a track doing even though we're going to have to change, I think, the name of the strength beta from track attack to slow burn. And we can discuss why later. I can in good faith have you doing that while using all this power. It's going to cloud all the work that you would have been doing had you participated in track attack this time. And it would have been, because does that make sense? Like I did all this work, okay, and I'm not a whole lot this is a time of metabolic change when you had added this huge power crunching, quite difficult workout that you've talked about. Sarah, you've talked openly about how difficult this is. I have mantras about it. I have, because it's not that hard. It's not that hard. I'm like, I can point to all this body of evidence that says, actually, yeah, this is kind of effing difficult and you're doing it anyway. But that's beside the point. It's not about whether or not you can take it because it's not about you. It's about objectively valuing the load that you're carrying at any given point in time. There's nothing wrong with Sarah. Sarah functions. There's nothing wrong with any of my clients. They function. They work. What we need to do is objectively look at that training load and adjust expectations accordingly. Mm-hmm. So to that end, I know you came out of this a little bit disappointed, but I'm looking at all of a sudden, like your body, like it kind of snapped too. You got infinitely more efficient from your jog and the warm up to powering yourself around that track. You got infinitely stronger muscles working more efficiently as well with that power figure. The PA to HR is a proxy for power. It's not perfect, but it's good. I want that number, at least on the A portion of the EAT for someone that I'm training one-on-one for performance. I want that number to be below 5% always. And I want that number to drop the faster they get. And you can have negative power, which means running is quite effortless for your body. When DJ runs and he's tired, it can be as high as 15. When everything's locked together and working, it can be negative 15. Wow.
Yeah, I've had -1 or 2 when it's freezing cold. That's the only time that mine gets into the negative numbers. And that's when I notice that my body loves a cold day for sure.
Most bodies do. You might prefer to live in a warm, humid climate, but performance-wise, your body is going to do better. You'd rather be running for your life in a colder climate, Fargo style, than in a really hot climate with that wild animal kingdom in the Hawaii Set show on TBS that my husband makes me watch on occasion. You don't want to be running for your life there.
No. Oh my God. No. That's why I only race like short races when I know I'm going to like really try and go at the top of my ability currently. I only do that when it's cold. Like it's got to be 30 degrees basically, or I'm not interested.
Okay. I think I'm kind of satisfied with this. We got what we needed from it. If you want to click out of it and then we go to your more recent EAT. Okay. So you were disappointed with that one, but you also were not aware. Again, the way we tend to look at it is how well did I control? Not as well as you usually do. What kind of paces did I hit? You were in a lot of personal, because leaving this career behind was hard, having to explain it to people who love you and meanwhile believe in you are going to say exactly the opposite of what you need to hear because they think they're being encouraging. That's hard. Coming out for running is like you need something to work. And when the running doesn't feel like it's working, it can feel like everything is falling apart. I get that. So when we go into the most recent EAT.
This was yesterday. Yes, it was yesterday.
Yeah. So the first number I see is that training stress score is a lot higher, which means you were able to do more work today. That differential is not about like some of it is like you were fresher, but that's the kind of white noise that I talk about. What a normal variability for you versus this tells me like you are much more relaxed coming into it. You were a lot less stressed while doing it. Yeah, it was partially maybe the air or the weather or whatever, but it's more than that.
Yeah. Yeah, it was, well, for me, and I think I said this in my comment here, I was really not going to do this, like including when I woke up because yesterday was Ross's birthday. Saturday, we had our whole thing with the bike. I was not in a good place Saturday night. I was tired. I had cried a lot. I wanted to like go to sleep and not think about what I was going to do the next morning. So I woke up the next morning and I programmed the 5x1 workout into my Polar. I opened up a window on my computer. I did that. I synced my watch. I was like, all right, this is what I'm going to do, I guess. And then I walked outside and the air felt really cool. And I was just like, but what if I did another EAT? This is my chance to do it if I want to do it. After this, it's kind of too late. And then I did the sort of like, what good could come of this? What's the worst that can happen kind of calculation. And then without really thinking about it too hard, I just selected it on my watch because it's one of my like favorites in my Polar watch. Selected it and I went. And so without all of the, like when I did the previous AAT, I had stress dreams about it the night before. This workout still stresses me out, but I hadn't had any of that. I had literally just decided to do it 2 minutes before I actually like between doing silly toes and like actually starting my watch. That's when I made the decision. So yeah, I was carrying a lot less stress this time. And between that and the air outside, I think that was a huge factor in how I felt going through it. And when I was running, I felt really good. I felt way better than last time. My heart rate was willing to come up. In the previous one, I didn't even get my heart rate to 180. And normally in the C section, I can get it to the 180s, not easily, but I can get it there for most of it. Previous EAT, I could not even get it to hit 180 until the last 2 minutes of the workout, maybe. This time it came up. I had control over it. I could push it a little higher and it didn't feel like I'm going to have to stop if I go any harder than this. And the only thought that was going through my head was, I wonder how fast I'm going right now. I really don't know. I kind of have a feeling that I'm going kind of fast and it feels good, but I'll find out later. And it was really cool. Feeling the curiosity and the real sort of like, this is something that I'm going to learn from and that I'm interested in. And that and I think it's going to make me feel really good.
And the race day takeaway from what you just said is exactly that. If you can walk into a race, not thinking about the finish line, not thinking about the step by step and just doing it, the outcome will almost always be better than if you have an A goal, B goal, C goal, and a quarter into the race, you know that A goal is gone. You're hoping for the B goal, which is a consolation prize, and you're not excited about it. So the stress is mounting, not the excitement. Curiosity will always get you further. Mm-hmm. I wonder what's going to happen today. I wonder what's going to happen at the end. Am I going to have a kick? Am I going to have, as opposed to concern, curiosity over concern every day of the week.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I really did have a kick. I thought of you saying, when you see the finish line, speed up. And I think it was like the last 50 meters, maybe. I was like, oh, this is where I see the finish line. And I did have it in me to speed up, and I was wrecked. But then I had to stop and walk for sure. I was not able to pick up a jog right away, but it felt really good to have just that little bit left, even though I had been working really hard.
And you hit faster paces on all three segments.
Faster paces. Mm-hmm.
Again, some of that's weather, but some of that is the 8 consistent weeks. We had started the doubles a couple weeks before that, I think. So you might have had 11 weeks of that second run of a day, and then 8 weeks.
About at the beginning of the marathon ramp. Yeah, that's when yeah.
And then you had about 8 weeks of biking Ross up a hill twice a day. So with that, remember, it takes a minimum 2 weeks for the benefit of a workout performed consistently to present in performance metrics, KPIs, if you will. So like the soonest you could expect to see that to start sinking in would be 2 weeks after that. There's no guarantee that you will, because you're going to be tired as we keep pressing it up in the ante. And by the way, the cutback week, it's usually we say it's for the athlete, but it's also for us. So we get some clean data, get some of that fatigue aside, and get a clean set of numbers before we start the next push. We haven't really needed to do one with you because you showed up and we got clean data from this, because your body has adapted now after 2 months of consistent work that you haven't given up on. And it's been easier to hang on to it because you're not looking for something specific out of it. Well, here you go. You actually had it. And that was what I meant when I said there are 2 big things that you missed. And I want you, so 1, that we've added all this effortlessly. And 2, this is the other one. We have proof that it's working. If you click on analyze, so there are 2 different ways of talking about training stress score. When you look at the top of the screen and you see RTSS, the last one that you did was a 127. This one was a 138. So the raw difference from at a glance, because that number hits my email inbox, the raw difference tells me that you were able to do more work this time than before. RTSS is not specifically the way your body responded to the workout. The way your body responded to this one was it was able to do more than it did last time. The why falls out of the analysis. And the analysis, again, is a lot more of this soft, fluffy stuff in context that people don't like. Just give me numbers and data, as though like that's ever been a fair thing. If when you come in for a performance review at work and it was just about the numbers with no context, would you have a fair outcome there? You didn't meet your numbers. Well, you didn't give me the tools required. That's just abusive. Why would you do that to yourself? Not to say that's what you do, but that's what many do. So when I look here, your efficiency factor on the whole is as high for the entire workout as it was during the A portion when you were going faster, which is not a line that you would necessarily draw. We want to see efficiency factor doing this. Yeah. What I want to see is when it's impaired, what does recovery look like? So this will give us a cleaner idea. And I bet if we were to pull out some of your previous EATs, this would be more aligned with it, but faster and more efficient with a little bit better control. So go down and let's smooth the graph a little bit. A little bit. Yeah. No more than halfway. All right. So what do you see?
So I see this thing where, my heart rate's rising gradually. I love the way the thing goes kind of like whoosh, 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 whoosh around the track when I do that. And my pace is increasing. Like I can see where this is exactly the part where I pick it up for the C portion. And you can see how my cadence kind of goes up a little bit every time I'm trying to pick up the pace, and then it kind of flattens out.
Stop. Did that happen last time in the EAT?
Not that I remember. No, I mean, I remember feeling like it was a struggle to go harder for each one.
No, you just looked at this graph at a previous EAT. Did the lines cross? Did the red line cross over the cadence line?
No.
That's a big deal. If you remember, think back to the webinar I did a long time ago where I showed people how to look back over their race and determine what we could do differently next time.
My race was one of those, actually. Yeah.
I want that to happen. I want your heart rate higher than your cadence. And like why those metrics matter. It's about control. I want a steady cadence no matter what, because when you speed up, I need that to come from muscular power, not from push off from footfalls, so that you're taking more steps to get faster, because that's inefficient. And there's nothing you can do to control that other than get stronger. The stronger you get, it's a subconscious thing, so your cadence is pretty much unbroken all the way through, and your heart rate was rising in a very controlled manner. There was no point where you felt out of control. When you scroll back just like a nanomillimeter. Okay. So at that point where you stopped work and the pace drops off, do you see how quickly now hold and drag to the bottom of to the trough, drag right to there. Yeah. Cause we want to highlight that area. So if we could, the high point.
I can drag. Cool. Okay. Yeah. So, but you want me to hold and drag over the high point until the trough?
No. That's perfect. That's perfect. Okay. Right there. Right there. So what again, I'm looking at, look at the average and the max. So, in the min of 162. So we dropped effectively from 186 to 162 in a minute. That's a great drop. Mm-hmm. So that's one of the things that I look for in my one-on-one clients, right? When you stop working, does your heart start working? And you've got visually, you've got that nice pretty drop that happens very quickly. That's good. And you have again, control over this all the way through. Towards the end, your cadence is coming back into line. So you're recovering really well too. That's a long way of saying that your body is working really efficiently. If we could jump out of that and go highlight your A portion of the EAT.
Okay. So for this one, I did not press the lap button. I was just letting my polar do its thing, but I'm pretty sure this is about where it starts at the end of so okay, here. No, wait, that's the recovery. This is the AT. All right. So this is where the EAT starts, and the A portion is going to be this is messy. This would be easier in polar flow, because that's where I kind of have how many minutes is that? 8? No, that's clearly not it. Okay. No, sorry.
It's okay.
We're almost that's close to it. Yeah.
I'd say that's close enough. I mean, it's a teeny bit short, but again, it's not about exactness. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So your net grade pace.
Trying to capture more of this kind of stuff over here.
Yeah, I'm just trying to, so your efficiency there did not, it wasn't a huge jump up. Mm-hmm. It did increase, but it wasn't a huge jump like last time. And I'm betting that number jumps quite a bit the further you get into the workout. So if you just grab any other, again, there's probably some overlap there, but let's
see. Let me try. I think I can.
Yeah. You got.
I think I can capture the C section. Is that it? No, that's pretty.
This is why I like having the lap button. So don't worry about it too much. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, that's because if I can pull up polar flow and we can look at it in there, but then we don't have the Training Peaks metrics for that as much.
Exactly. Yeah. So again, it doesn't necessarily matter. What matters to me is that you are as efficient, you are, your muscles. So that power figure just gives me, when I say it's a proxy for power, are your muscles doing the work, or is your cardiovascular system doing the work? And you were coasting through this. You were coasting through this whole workout. The last EAT was work. This was, your body was able to do more, but the impact on your body and the recovery time was probably way less. And a lot of that was exogenous, meaning you dropped all the stress that we'd had the last time you were doing the EAT. A lot of it was that all the new work that you'd been doing had been catching up to you. But this is where the performance comes from. That final section was a lot more effortless than it was in the previous EAT. Mm-hmm. So
it definitely felt that way for sure.
And all that just to say, if you're looking like at the raw numbers, looking for a perfectly linear trajectory, you're going to be missing the story, which is that you were able to do more work a lot more efficiently with much better control while managing a higher, heavier workload than you had been the last time. So congratulations. Those are two both very big wins, and both are very good signs that, I can't promise that you'll get a showcase race on race day. Yeah, but you are improving.
I'm starting to feel like if I don't get a showcase race on race day, that's something that I am learning more and more how to contextualize. I feel like the collective weight of everything that I've done just in 2019 alone, and 2018 was also a great year of running for me. It really was.
Don't click out of what you're doing, by the way, because I've got one more thing to say. When you finish, and just don't click the screen. Yeah. So it was a great year of running.
2018 was also a great year of running. I did not run a marathon, and that was, I almost did, and then I decided not to. I had a lot of showcase races at shorter distances, almost every single one. And all of that came from basically never planning on racing more than a week or two in advance. And because what that allowed me to do was not make it about the race and make it more about the work that I was doing on a month-to-month basis. And so therefore, I think coming to that place of curiosity with this EAT, that was something that had been building in me over the course of 2018. Every race that I ran in 2018 was like, I wonder what will happen if I do this. I'm sort of curious. And that was really cool. That's never something that I had allowed myself to have before in running, never. Like we always say, I had to, in order to sort of justify being there, I had to make it all about improving every single time, right? And by improving, obviously, I mean a faster finish time. That's the only way that I could ever see myself as improving. But I'm learning. I am learning the weight of consistent work over time and how much better it feels to be able to look back at that than basically any other metric I've ever had. Just kind of looking back at what I've been able to do and feel good. I care about that, and I really mean it when I say that. I'm not just sort of saying it because I know it's the right thing to say. Mm-hmm. Yeah. This was really good. I felt really good about this. This also helped me have a better day yesterday after the end of Saturday was so tough.
Good.
This helped me have a way better day. I just was kind of smiling because my husband knows what the EAT is, and he knew time before that I did it. He knew that I was going out to do this big thing, but he didn't know I was doing it this time because I didn't know I was doing it. So I didn't talk, we had all my family over. I don't talk about the stuff with my family for reasons that we've gone into in the podcast before. It was just kind of my little secret that no one except all my Strava friends knew that I had gone out and done it. And I just felt like I could carry it around with me for the rest of the day and look at it and say, this is how good I feel about this. Forget any of the the numbers and the data or whatever, but how good I felt about it felt like proof that I'm doing so many things right that I did not know how to do right for so long. And I'm really, really, really grateful for that.
So if we were to think of the training stress score as a function of time, because it is, and I know F of X equals taking us all back to algebra 1. So this third portion of the EAT, would you on the right for that highlighted segment? Yeah.
Oh, the training stress score here. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So would you say that the hardest part of the EAT is the C portion?
I actually stand by what I said in that mantra a couple weeks ago. I think the hardest part is the B portion. I think the hardest part is pushing, but not all the way, knowing that there's more to go. Mentally, that is the hardest part. And once I was through the B portion, I knew that the gnarly stuff was really going to start. And I knew that I needed a mantra for every lap of the track. And I do have that for my C section. I have something different that I'm going to focus on in my head for every lap. I don't have that for the B portion because it's the middle part. That's the hardest for me.
Okay. Then let's go back to the beginning of the B portion, which I think is where that nice little spike is. Yep. A little bit to the right.
Yeah. I think
right there.
It's right here where I start where my cadence starts going up a little bit. Okay. So
let's capture both the B and the C portion.
Okay.
All in one go, all the way.
Yeah.
A little bit. Stop. There you go.
Okay.
Okay. So I'm taking screenshots of all this as you go. So for that portion, again, I want that to be relative. This is 20 minutes. And how long is one leg of your bike commute?
This morning was 12 minutes. I was pretty psyched about that. But usually it's 15 to 18.
Okay. So it's roughly 30 minutes round trip.
Mm-hmm.
The front portion is harder because Ross is in the bike than the home portion and vice versa for the afternoon. So again, when we look at the numbers, when you're biking with Ross up a hill, that commute is roughly a training stress score of 39. Mm-hmm. So to give you perspective, again, on the size of the work or the actual work that you've been doing and what you've added into your schedule, what you have added into your schedule on a daily basis is almost as much intensity and training stress score as the B and C portion of the EAT together.
Wow. Even though my heart rate doesn't get that high?
Mm-hmm. It's about the training stress score is a measure for coaches. RTSS is roughly like how your body responded to it. That's the way to look at it. Then there's the amount. So if I give you a workout, that's why it populates on the left side of the column. If you click out of this for a second, you can see what I'm talking about. I got a screenshot.
Are you ready for me to click out of it?
Yeah, because that's the only relativity I needed you to get there. So when you click in, when you just open it, and we get out, sorry, I should have said click out of the analysis and back into.
Got it.
It populates on the left when I'm training someone one-on-one. I at some point will, for the hard effort workouts or the benchmark workouts, they will randomly show up with either a distance or an average pace populated in there. So if you see what happens if you put distance of 7 miles on the left, on the left column, on the left, that left. Yeah. Sorry. If you just add in 7 and then hit enter.
Okay.
Maybe because you're not in the coaching version. Mine populates.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, interesting. Okay.
So when mine populates,
the rest of this.
And it gives me specifically, it calculates TSS to give me an idea of how much stress that will generate for you. And then RTSS is relative. So if I guess that this is going to be a training stress score of 110 and it comes out to 138, then that workout was a whole lot harder than I had expected it to be. Where did that come from? So I could be overtraining you and not be aware of it. So that's also a discrepancy that I'm looking for. It makes sense totally that it wouldn't come up over here for you.
When I hit save, it populated the pace, but that's it. Yeah.
Interesting. Because it populates pace and TSS. It doesn't populate anything else. But it also I have the coaching dashboard and you don't. So that's in this version, but anyway, all that doesn't matter. What matters is that you, without kind of realizing how much training stress you were adding to yourself, you were taking on something really hard on a regular basis, and you're able to do more work. Now you kind of know the why, and one thing relative to the other. It's not really about like the effort and the heart rate. It's about the power generated. And if you remember, we can generate a whole lot of power without getting your heart rate up at all. It can happen when you use more power going downhill than you do uphill, but not more effort. That's what got me in Jack and Jill Marathon, because it's a lot more, like you said, to hold back. Trying to slow yourself down. You have that braking going on when you're running downhill. That's actually more effort and less efficient than running uphill. So all of that to say, like, yes, heart rate's part of it, but it's not perfect. And when coaches are like, you can't just use heart rate, I'm like, true. But do we need to? What's the use case if we're using it just as a cap for people who have never been taught that easy was not just good enough, but exactly what we wanted, that they were deficient in some way and had to work harder and go longer and prove that they weren't lazy in every workout? If you're training a population who has never truly been allowed to coast anywhere without being told that they in some way, implicit or explicitly, you don't deserve to be here, then yeah, we need a heart rate cap there. It's easier to get a Fitbit and that will measure heart rate. It's not perfect, but it'll do it. Trying to power as a metric is not yet broadly accessible. So to require it would be a little elitist, and I'm not ready to go there yet. My business is not so large that I would need to exclude on that basis. And I don't ever really want it to be. So with that in mind, that's the high and the low and the what and the why of what I'm looking for in Training Peaks. And we've basically spent this entire webcast now talking about your 2 big wins. And hopefully this will give people a framework that they can use to go back in their own Training Peaks and see some wins too. Because that average pace might not be faster, but if you think about the aggregate load that's been going on, you could be not losing during a time of incredible stress. And that does, it's like if your EATs aren't doing this over time, you might be managing more in other aspects of your life, especially if you're in fitness protection and you're not in a hardcore training cycle right now. That doesn't mean you're backsliding. It means you're doing exactly what we want you to do, which is maintain. And when it's time to push, you'll be able to because you haven't lost anything. It's not about gaining as much as it is about not losing or maintaining exactly what you need to be able to come back that much faster. It is easy to get into and stay in the performance mindset, but with that mindset, at some point, it won't be worth it anymore. And my hope is that we'll be able to integrate this into your life in a way that doesn't make you feel bad. It's nothing but a positive feedback loop that is effectively making you feel better about yourself. That's objectively valuing the work that you're doing instead of performatively doing work so that you won't get abused more by the people around you, by the world at large. I see you. I see what you're doing, and I'm proud of you, all of you.
Yeah, I am too. And I just want to say that, I feel like this is the kind of thing that you can try and will yourself to like have the right answer about a lot. I certainly have always, I have fought against always wanting to have the right answer. And you even hear it in this conversation that you just heard between the two of us where I'm like, well, wait, let me just show you what a good attitude I have. And MK's like, all right, stop.
Yeah. Because it's not that you're wrong. I just don't want to lose. I don't want to lose kind of like where we were at any point. And with my ADHD, I kind of will. So the underlying theme to me is that if you, Sarah Axelrod, white woman with a whole lot of white privilege and thin privilege and maybe some class privilege to coming your way as well. Like if you can still look at the work that you've done and fail to give yourself credit for it, that's real. That's been conditioned in you. That means that the work that you have done has been categorically overlooked by others. If you at the top of the food chain still can't see what you're doing objectively and celebrate it, then the rest of us, it's not shocking that we can't either. So I want that to be validating to everyone. It's not something that Sarah's done wrong and I've corrected her on. Those forces are real. Those impacts are real. I will always care more about the burden than the raw number, both in Training Peaks and in the lives of my clients. When it comes to the work, we're going to celebrate the work. We're going to show our work. We're going to talk about the work, and we're going to acknowledge every bit of work that we're doing, because I fully understand that we live in a world that doesn't always validate you, that doesn't always notice your work, that doesn't really give a flip about your work, because why wouldn't you do more work? And there's something that's kind of perverse and a little bit ugly about the way we talk about work, as though you can work your way into being noticed. You can be so good they can't ignore you. Again, I love Simon Sinek. I really, really do, but spoken like a true white man. Like that's one of the few cues I hear, and I'm like, ooh. Let me tell you what it's like, Simon. He does say a lot of good things, though. Know your why. And I quote that a lot. Like, if you're going to do something, why? I went and trained for this. Why? Okay. Because the why and the what doesn't sync, you could be doing a lot of pointless work that might be better off. You might want to redirect those energies elsewhere. Mm-hmm. So I will never ignore the work that any of my people are doing. And I know you wanted to do one thing with Training Peaks, but what I wanted to do today was show some of the work that you really hadn't been thinking about or aware of, and talk about why that worked, how that worked for you. And it only worked really because you weren't aware of it. But this is the final piece of it. I can't be objective about my own training. No one really can. This is why I have a coach. It's not that like, I think ST is better than me or imposter syndrome. It's like, I can't look at myself and always be aware of what I'm doing. And it's more than like, I need a pat on the pooper to keep going forward like a child. There's nothing, you can be as dismissive about it as you want. Not to say that you are, but some are. You'll hear, there are all kinds of trolls out there that are going to say negative, nasty things to and about me and to and about you. And I want you to hear those criticisms as they come and say, what must you think of me then? And give that right back to them. Because you're coached, you're loved, you're winning at life. It is not losing to ask for a little bit of assistance. It is not losing to have an objective third party taking a look at what you're doing, capturing what you missed, because it's not about what you missed. And I get it. Most of us have lived in a world who up to this point, what you missed defined you. It defined your capabilities. It defined your potential. But what you miss though is those are the things that not just you have taken for granted, but the world has dismissed. And there's beauty in that. And that is where I want to play.
Yeah, me too. And what I love about what we're doing is that we want to coach everybody. We want to coach everybody who thinks they could use a coach, would like a coach, but would never, but doesn't feel like it's okay to ask for that. That is the opposite of how we want you to look at it. That's the opposite of how we want you to think about it. Like people, you only deserve a coach if you have a big goal, or you only deserve a coach if you're somehow fast enough to deserve a coach, or if you're, your aspirations are worthy of coaching. I can tell you right now that a lot of people in my family have always, I'm pretty sure, thought it was kind of a joke that I needed a coach or that I would want a coach. They have a lot of plausible deniability, and the ones that I'm thinking of are not going to watch this. They have a lot of plausible deniability, but I'm in a family with, quote unquote, real runners that I'm related to or step related to who win races and stuff. If they were going to have a coach, everyone would really want to hear about that at Thanksgiving dinner. But nobody really asks about me as a coach or me and my coach or really any of those things, because there is a very, unspoken but well understood perception that like, oh yeah, okay, whatever. And I see that in a way that I didn't really see it before. And fuck that. I want to coach everybody who wants a coach. And I never want anybody to feel like they don't deserve a coach because they think they're somehow lesser.
I want every single person who's ever even contemplated buying a pair of Spanx. That's my demographic. And that's why. Mm-hmm. You don't need Spanx. You need a coach. You need someone that's going to arm you with a shield that can push back against all the bullshit the world's going to throw at you and celebrate and give you creating a safe space behind that shield to celebrate all the work that you're doing.
I love seeing all the work that everybody's doing. That is the best part of this job and about doing everything that we do. The day-to-day coaching in the Facebook group is my favorite thing. Even before I was officially doing this, it was what I loved the most, because I love that it's a space where people can talk about the work that they're doing and not feel like they have to hide it or be, too deferential or apologize for it or minimize it in some way. I love that. I love talking to people about the work they're doing. And I love people talking to me about the work they're doing, because I can hear that they're talking about it to me in a way that they don't feel like they can talk about it, like with the way I don't feel like I can talk about it with my family. I'm not talking about my immediate family. My immediate family is very supportive and wonderful. And they, my husband and my daughter, they make a lot of space in our lives for me to do this thing. And I love them so much for that, because for a very, very long time, I did not have that. And me
neither.
Yeah.
Yay.
All right. We're going to let everybody go, I think.
Did we cover any of the things that you'd wanted to cover?
Well, what I just want to tell everybody is to go listen to / watch MK's call with Coach Tia, which she had this past week, because I thought that there were some really, really good takeaways in there. And I love what Tia did. What she wrote, she showed MK, she said, I'm writing this on my whiteboard: healthy and volume. Stay healthy while you build volume. That's what you want your athlete to do while they're training for a marathon. That's kind of like the number one thing. And if they're doing that, then everything else is good. Everything else will fall into place. I thought that everything about that call was wonderful. And I thought that it reinforced so beautifully what we're teaching people to do in fitness protection. And so I recommend that as kind of a corollary to this call. Similar to how we did last time when Coach MK and I talked about the tube of toothpaste. That was kind of a follow-up to her phone call with Coach Tia. And so similarly, the phone call with Coach Tia this time, which we'll provide a link to in the show notes and in the YouTube notes, because you'll probably be watching this on YouTube. I think it's a really good sort of precursor to kind of the way coaches and athletes talk to each other and the way you measure progress and what progress looks like. And I think it's different from what a lot of people think.
Yeah. And notice we didn't talk about numbers or paces. Like, at all. And the only thing I threw out there was I went with the Training Peaks had predicted my tempo pace to be 7:55. And so I just kind of didn't have the buzz on my watch. I was just trying to feel it every time I went out there because we're early enough that it's not. And she knows also, I explained, I can't feel anything yet. So yeah, the expectation for years, I did pre-race prep calls and tried to guide people through math towards understanding. And the math did not provide understanding or even visualization of what it would be. And I stand by what I tried to do, but I understand it didn't land the way that I wanted to. So I think we've come up with a much more effective way of communicating the lesson. But also it's hard to reconcile that expectation. People think that, I'm the Macmillan calculator. We're going to talk and I'm going to spit out mile by mile by mile. It really doesn't work that way. It's about understanding relativity. Like I can just pick it up for like 15 seconds and that's not a big difference. I'm like, well, but it is over 26.2 miles. If you think of that in terms of effort, 15 extra seconds might be all you get between your A and your B pace in the EAT. Like, really? But think about the difference between the A and the B portion of the EAT. Like, that's the relativity I want people to get, because a lot of the little cues that we give ourselves are terrible. Or a lot of the habits that you've picked up by being part of the runner community are terrible, which is not to say that like no one knows what they're doing, but there's no guarantee that the person who's giving you advice truly knows what they're talking about, or that the advice that they're giving you is going to work for you. I have to remind myself all the time, I'm by no means behind. If someone's correcting me and has nothing to do with me, coachless, unenrolled amateur, you don't know me, thank you. You don't know me, thank you. I'm good. I'm coached, I'm loved, I'm winning at life. It is not now and has not ever been to denigrate the person speaking. It's been about grounding yourself and reminding yourself that you do have a plan and you do know what you are doing. And so that throwaway comment that someone gives you right before the race starts, thank you, tuck it in your back pocket. You're not doing anything wrong.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's really important to remember going into fall race season. You have to work at it, and you have to kind of take a deep breath and put a little bit of a barrier up and not let anything penetrate too quickly, because everything you know more than you think you do, as we like to say.
Absolutely.
You're coached and loved, everybody.
Yay! Go win at life.
Go win at life.